Welcome, everyone in the United States, Canada, and around the world to another episode of It's a Wrap with Wrap, the podcast that shares real stories of hope, resilience, and purpose. Today, we are joined by writer, storyteller, quilter, columnist, blogger, creator, and the author behind the reflective, heartwarming book, High on Life, Lorie Kleiner Eckert. If you've ever wanted to slow down, savor your days, or find meaning in the small details of life, you're going to love this conversation. Lorie has the gift for turning everyday life into emotional touchstones, and her book does exactly that. Lorie, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, Ron. It's a delight to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Now, let's start at the beginning, Lorie. Can you share with us a bit about your early life and how your experiences shaped you as a person and a storyteller and a writer?
Oh, okay. Well, how early would you like me to go?
Well,
My
wherever you want to
professional life
start,
or my
we're going to start
childhood?
at the beginning. You maybe when you were a little tiny tot.
Well, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and in a very, very, very stable neighborhood. So I was with the same kids from public school, kindergarten through 12th grade. So that was a really, really nice experience. I'm also Jewish, and the even though it was public school, it was 99% Jewish. So I never knew I was a minority until I went to college, which was kind of shocking. But anyway, so a very stable background is what started me. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. All my grandmas, my aunts, everybody was a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
My dad worked in a family business, I had a brother. We were the kind of people who sat around the dinner table at night and everyone took a turn saying, "What did you do today? How was your day?"
Yeah.
The longer I live, the more I know how fortunate I am to have had such an amazing storybook childhood. And as we talk more about High on Life, my favorite story in the book is about my mother. And that I have only started to appreciate her after her death, but I love her, I love her, I love her. She was just like an amazing person. So anyway, had a very, very stable childhood, lived upstairs from my grandma and grandpa. If I got mad at my mom, I could go downstairs and be with my grandma. It was great. I walked home from school to have my grandma make me potato latkes for lunch. When I got my first job, I she had moved by that time to a retirement center, and of course, it was very near to where I worked, just as luck would have it. So I, as a young adult, go to her house for potato latkes for lunch. So I think I had a storybook childhood. And then, really where my professional life starts, though, is in 1994 when, at the age of 42, I got divorced. So it had been 21 years with mom and dad and 21 years with my husband. And then all of a sudden, I'm going from stay-at-home mom, mother of 3 amazing, wonderful, terrific children, full-time job as a mom, and to half-time parenthood because we had shared custody, so that was shocking, and I had to earn a living. So I thought
Yeah,
I
that's
would.
how that works.
Yeah, that's how that works.
Once the breadwinner, the
It's an interesting process.
yeah,
So I thought I would turn my hobby of quilt making into a paid profession. And if anybody knows about quilting, there's quilt shows, quilt seminars, all kinds of quilt retreats, programs all over the country, all over the world, all the time. And I thought I'd make a series of quilts and I'd go on the quilt lecture circuit. I did not know that there is no lecture circuit.
okay, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, but it's a good thing I didn't know that because this got me going on making the quilts, and I had that as a goal, and I gave myself a stiff goal. I would make 1 quilt every 2 weeks, which is, like, shocking for a quilter to hear, but I was making wall hangings, not bed quilts. Why? Because 5'7", but I'm kind of a scrawny person, so for me to schlep like a dozen quilts around the country with me for show and tell just wasn't gonna happen, but I could take 1 suitcase full of wall hangings, so that's what I did. And I made quilts that had words and symbols pieced into the design because nobody was doing that, and so I would stand alone in my field, and I just started making quilts that said whatever I wanted them to say. So that first series of quilts says, "Bloom," it says, "Come as you are, you're lovely," it says, "Change is," it says, "Gee, you are you," and whatever I needed to say, whatever I did came to me, I made that quilt. So, for instance, the quilt that says, "Change is," has a pattern called ocean waves around the words because ocean waves roll in and roll out and roll in and roll out, and they change and they change and they change. And and it just is, change is. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. So
Yeah.
I made whatever quilt came to me. Well, one morning, I woke up and I had made 12 quilts at that point in time, and a slightly more poetic version of the words on the quilts was running through my head, so I got up and wrote those words down and recognized at that point that a book had been written. I don't take credit for writing the book, I take credit for making the quilts. But what I wrote down was like vows you would make to yourself as you start a new portion of your life, and the vows start saying, "I love you" is the sequel, with acceptance and love of the self, the story that must come first. And toward the lofty goal of love, I make these vows to myself. So that was the beginning, and I and, a friend came over to my house and said, "These quilts are gorgeous," and as I told her the stories behind them, she said, "You should write down the story behind each quilt and put it together and sell it as a book." So that's what I did, and
Wow.
that it was so easy, if you've talked to, I would imagine, lots of authors, it's hard to find a publisher. But I was rejected by 22 publishers before Pelican Publishing Company agreed to publish my adult picture book, short on words but long on pictures, illustrated with full color images of these quilts. And then I went on the lecture circuit with them, but I realized that my message was very general. It was self-acceptance and loving yourself and power of positive thinking. No rocket science here, but just things that we all know but need to be reminded. And I thought, well, gee, I don't have to take myself to quilt groups because quilt groups paid like $75 for a program back there in the 1990s. And I could call myself, I wanted to call myself an inspirational speaker, but I thought that smacked of religion. So I called myself a motivational speaker. And I booked my program to every kind of group from PTAs to Procter& and Gamble. So that was the start. My first book is illustrated with quilts. My second book is illustrated with quilts. Each had a lecture that went with it. The first one was a journey towards self-acceptance and love. The second one was having the courage to
If you are enjoying listening to or viewing the podcast, we would appreciate you spreading the word by sharing the podcast to your family and friends. Please visit the podcast website, itsawrapwithrap.com, where you can find all the episodes, previews of future episodes, the podcast Book Nook, showcasing many of the books our guests have authored, and a link to subscribe to the podcast email list, as well as products and services offered by our sponsors.
say yes to your life. You see, these are all just very general topics.
Yeah.
So men and women, children could be in my audience. I mean, I went to schools too, I
So
just
so you're
covered
basically a storyteller quilter.
I started out as a storyteller quilter,
Yeah.
and and so as I told you the story behind the quilt, I developed some kind of motivational theme, and but I really have not been making my quilts with words for I don't know what, 10, 15 years at this point, and instead I've just been writing, but my MO is the same thing. I tell the stories of my life, so you've read my book, this is exactly what it is. I tell the stories of my life, hoping other people will glean life lessons from it. That's exactly what I did with the quilts,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what I do now in writing. But it's funny with the new book with High on Life, which is actually, I am so proud to say, my 5th book. With High on Life, I went back to the images. So each of my little stories are 2 or 3 pages long. I like to say High on Life is great to take with you to the bathroom. You can read a whole story in one sitting,
Yeah.
and then
It was fun reading it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and each story has a pretty picture that goes with it, with a one-line takeaway.
Yeah.
So, again, tell the stories of my life. Hope you can glean life lessons from them. I always told my audiences, I am not a psychologist. I cannot tell you how to run your life. My degree is in elementary education, not in psychology. So, but I can tell you about my life, and if it's meaningful to you, hey, great. So,
You can take away things from that. Sure.
yeah.
All right. So you already told us you're a quilter and how you blend the spoken and quoted words in your role as a speaker and storyteller. Now, who are some authors or thinkers that have influenced your worldview?
Oh, that's a very good question. Lots of them. Let's see. When I was the motivational speaker person, I really haven't been doing the motivational speaking. I've been writing for probably the last 10 years without doing much speaking. I would, again, when I would tell my audience that I have no right, to tell them how to run their life, I would quote Richard Bach, who's the guy who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, but he wrote another book called, it's either Illusions or Book of Illusions. Paul Auster wrote one and Richard Bach wrote the other. And that book is about a mere God figure that comes to earth and talks to a mere mortal, gives him the Messiah manual. And basically, it doesn't have any page numbers, but you open it magically to whatever you need. But in that book, the Messiah says we tend to teach best at which we most need to learn. So that influences me, and that's who I am. That's who. So as I'm writing about self-acceptance, self-esteem, power positive thinking, I'm trying to convince myself of these things. I also say repeatedly that I think life is difficult and that I act as a cheerleader with the message that life is difficult, but that you can do it. So that's where I am.
Okay. Now, how do your personal values influence the stories or messages you choose to share?
Well, I I am a very honest person, and so I what I write is true. It's true to me. I want my kids at this point are 49, 47, and 42. I never know how old Lisa is. Anyway,
She'll be glad to know that.
yeah.
When's her birthday?
Okay.
She better
She was born in '83 and she was
okay.
in March, so
You
she's gonna be 43, so she must be
okay.
42. She must be 42, I don't know.
Don't forget her present.
Anyway, yeah, good mother that I am. But anyway, so my I think that I'm just all over the book. If you read the book, if you read anything that I've written, I also write a blog twice a month that I post on my website. I review books. I have a book blog. I've reviewed 242 books on my book blog. So how do other authors influence me? I could do that question all day. But my values are there. They're all over the place. So one of the stories in High on Life is a letter that I wrote to myself at the terribly strange age of 70, quoting Simon and Garfunkel. And their bookends themes had how terribly strange to be 70. So I was writing a letter to myself, what I would want the 16-year-old version of me to know. And it was all full of personal values. It was I, my belief that you have to live an honorable life. And so there's a Jewish prayer, the Mishabera prayer, and help us have the courage to make our lives a blessing. So that's in there. There's the belief that life is hard. There's a prayer poem that says, birth is a beginning and death the destination, and life is the journey. And during that journey, you go from, I don't know what, health to sickness, and we hope back to health again. But you also go from defeat to defeat to defeat. So these are all my personal values and beliefs. So I am all over the page. And what I started off telling you about the age of my children, you give them 3 personal essays, and I'll tell you which one I wrote, it's just I'm there all over the place. And by the same token, my publisher from time to time will have AI write something as if I wrote it, and it's like, "Not a chance we can use this. It's not me.
Right.
This isn't me." So, I don't know if in the 36 stories in High on Life, if you started to get tired of me or anything like that, but you had me, and back in the day, early days of having books out, used to be dating. I was divorced, and it was a very tricky thing for a man to read my book or books at the time because it gave him a head start. He knew so much about me, and
Yeah.
how was I
Yeah.
gonna catch up and learn about him? So, yeah, so my personal values are really just absolutely all over the page.
Okay.
It affects everything.
Now, Lori, do you happen to have the book next to you by chance?
I don't.
Okay. Well, just to
Want me to go
explain,
get it?
just to explain to the audience, the title is High on Life, CHAI on Life. Explain explain that word high. It's a Hebrew word as well, or it could be taken as by a lot of people as chai tea, right?
Right, yeah.
So explain how did you get that? How did you get that
Yeah.
word?
So, well, really, it starts with the movie Pretty Woman. This is a long story, and, in that movie, Julia Roberts
Yeah,
is her first night with Richard Gere, and she goes off to the bathroom to floss her teeth, and he thinks she goes off to the bathroom to do drugs, and so he walks in on her, and she puts her dental floss behind her back. I think I'm remembering this correctly, and he kinda wrestles it out of her hands, and he said, "I thought you were getting high," and she said, "High on life, baby, high on life." So, that's kind of the starting point, and then when I was proposing the book to the manuscript to publishers, the book as it got published has 36 stories in it, but it started out as 18 stories. So, Chai, Chai, sometimes pronounced Chai, getting that more of a throaty, kind of like you can either say Hanukkah or you can say Hanukkah. So
right.
it's same thing, however you choose to say it. But that's a mystical word in Hebrew and it means life. If you drink the toast l'chaim, to life, that's the same root word. So, and it has a numeric value of 18. So Jewish folks often do silly things like if you give someone a gift, you give them $18 because that's high. You're giving them good luck. You're giving them life. Or if you really like them, you might give them double high, 36. So
36, yeah.
yeah. So the book is actually double high in stories. And how that happened was so I had given the book to Bruce Sports, my publisher, as it turns out. I had been rejected by other publishers, and he liked the book, but he said he was loath to print such a short book. It only got 18 stories. Could I make 36? And it's like, sure. So, because not all of some of the stories in High on Life, so there's 36 stories, and about 2 dozen of them had already been published on my website as blogs, and about a dozen were new for the book. So I said, "Sure. I mean, I can get that to you tomorrow," because it was just plucking the most evergreen stories, that evergreen meaning that it's not topical, it's not about the war in wherever or the pandemic or whatever. It's about, eh, being a mom, about going to the gym, about normal life. So I just picked out 18 more stories for him. I had given him 18 to start. He asked for 36. I gave him 18 more. I said to him, "You can go pick whatever stories you want on my website." He said, "Well, you pick the first, you give it a try, and if I don't like some of the stories, I'll go back and look at others." But he liked all the stories. And so
Good, yeah.
so that was great. So So high on life because I want to be high on life, baby, like Julia Roberts. And my stories are for everybody, like my lectures were for everybody, but they do have a Jewish spin because I'm Jewish. So it's high on life with a Jewish slant. And then I do like the connection with chai tea because
Yeah,
I want people to sit down with the book and relax with the book. You don't have to read the book from cover to cover. You can open it up and read a story that the title appeals to you, and the stories are wild and crazy. One of the blurbs that we got from the book was from a guy, Mike Kahn, who I actually graduated high school with, and he's written a series of mysteries set in St. Louis. And he wrote, "Just look at the table of contents. That's so much fun." So really, the contents are the stories deal with everything from belly fat to Billy Joel, and there's something
yeah.
for everyone.
That's what I
Yeah,
liked about the book. You could read it, pick it up, you could put it down, pick it up the next day, read it. It's not like, you were caught in the middle of reading something like mystery or something like that.
yeah.
But I kudos to you. You said you had 22 rejections on publishing the book,
On my first book, this was
on your first book.
yeah,
So, and
on.
and, and there's a lesson right there. You never quit. You kept
Oh,
going.
no, you don't quit. Definitely, you don't
Yeah.
quit.
You knew
And
you had something. It's just finding the right person. You knew what was going to happen.
well, I no and yes, you hope it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
What I say to aspiring writers is that once you have a manuscript complete, you're pretty much hurt every time you walk past a bookstore, and you really just need to get that into a bookstore. So that was how I felt. And I mean, this was back in the 1990s, in the mid 90s. So it wasn't like it is today where you send it off email. You had to send it by snail mail. You had to send them a self-addressed stamped envelope for them to send you the pink slip back telling you they weren't interested
Yeah.
or whatever.
They didn't
And
have self-publishing back then.
and they did have self-publishing, but it was not at all acceptable. And indeed, self-publishing has changed a lot. My first 3 books were published by Pelican Publishing Company. My 4th book, they were no longer publishing what I was writing. They had sold to a different company. I can't think even what their name is now, but they're not Pelican anymore. But anyway, and I just self-published it. So 3 books were traditionally published, then I self-published, and now I'm with Bancroft Press, so I'm back to traditional publishing. So I don't know that I ever had confidence it was gonna get published. Same thing like my quilts. Can I say a cuss word, a CRA word on your
Sure, go
podcast
ahead.
that
You
I
can
didn't know?
you can bleep it out.
I didn't know if my quilts were art or craft or crap. And that's the way I feel about my writing. I know that there are people who like my writing, but there are also people that I wear my heart on my sleeve and they just can't go there. So I don't know that I had confidence that it was going to get published, but I kept sending it out there. And
Well, you didn't
again,
give up, so
I
that's the
didn't give
main
up.
thing.
Yep.
Yeah. You
Yep.
kept trying, and that's what it's all about.
Yep. 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 Yeah.
So, moving on, your goal is to inspire people by sharing your personal stories. How do you balance honesty and vulnerability in your work?
Yes. I What do I do? My best friend, Roberta, who's also all over all of my books, so she was in High on Life. I have a chapter on 3 places to find a friend, so she's an old friend. Anyway, she just can't believe I mean, she's known me since we're in elementary school. She just can't believe how open and vulnerable I can be in my writing. And I understand where she's coming from because she's a lot more buttoned up than I am. But at the same time, th I do I do have an internal editor, and I do not vomit words. I so at this point in time, My grandkids are 19 on down to 8.
Uh-huh.
And guess what? They read me from time to time, not all the time. So it had to be something that my kids could read in the early days, and now it has to be something that my grandkids can read. I think possibly the most risque story in high on life is the one on belly fat. And I actually attended a class at my temple on wise aging, which is evidently they have these programs based on this one book and they're all over the country. But anyway, our assignment was to write a love letter to some part of our body. So I wrote to my belly, which is personally not so flat as I would like it to be, but
I
I
hear
have
you.
3 children that I adore, and they came from that belly. So amen. So that's the most risque thing I've written about, even, books when I was dating or whatever. Oh, my 4th book is a fantasy where Bill Nye is the romantic hero. He's the not Bill Nye the Science Guy, but Bill Nye the British actor guy who was in Love Actually, the famous Christmas movie, and even so this is a fantasy of me with, a movie star, and even there, the most we do is a little kiss. So so that's how I balance honesty and vulnerability. I tell you plenty from my heart, but I don't really get undressed.
I hear you.
Yeah, yeah. It's really my 8.5-year-old grandson is a prolific reader, so I wouldn't be surprised if he reads me from time to time, but
I'm sure he does.
all of my blogs go up on Instagram, on Facebook, and so on.
Have you ever looked around your life and thought, is this all there is? Have you ever dreamed of starting fresh, exploring the world, or reinventing yourself, but then stopped because you thought you were too old to begin again? If so, this message is for you. Barbara Grassie's inspiring book, American Expat Moving Abroad After 60, is a powerful guide for anyone who believes adventure, growth, and purpose don't end at retirement, they begin there. In this honest and encouraging book, Barbara shares real life experiences, practical guidance, and hard earned wisdom for Americans who are considering a bold move overseas later in life. This isn't a fantasy filled travel memoir, it's a realistic, hopeful roadmap for turning someday into now. Barbara understands the fears that come with such a big decision. Questions like, where should I live? Can I afford it? What about healthcare? What if I feel lonely or overwhelmed? And what will my family think? American Expat, moving abroad after 60, doesn't shy away from these concerns. Instead, it tackles them head on with clarity, compassion, and encouragement. Barbara explains the emotional side of leaving behind familiarity while also offering practical insights on finances, housing, healthcare, and adapting to a new culture. This book is for retirees, near retirees, and anyone in their 60s and beyond who feels called to something more. It's for people who know they still have stories to write, places to see, and purpose to pursue. What makes this book especially powerful is its message of empowerment. Barbara reminds readers that age is not a limitation, it's an asset. Life experience, resilience, and wisdom make it possible to navigate change with confidence and grace. You'll discover how moving abroad can bring a renewed sense of freedom, lower living costs in many countries, new friendships and community, cultural enrichment and adventure, and a deeper connection to yourself. Most importantly, this book gives you permission to dream again and the tools to act on those dreams. So if you've ever imagined sipping coffee in a foreign cafe, walking historic streets, or waking up each day knowing you chose courage over comfort, American Expat Moving Abroad After 60 is your invitation to begin. It's never too late to start a new chapter. It's never too late to follow a calling, and it's never too late to choose a life that excites you. Your next adventure may be waiting just beyond your comfort zone. Discover American Expat Moving Abroad After 60 by Barbara Grassi, available now in paper book and Kindle format from Amazon and major book retailers.
I know that my older grandchildren definitely bump into it online. So, yeah.
Maybe we should get you on TikTok. And it
Yeah.
really, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I was thinking for promoting the book that maybe the kids could get me on TikTok, but really my ideal audience is baby boomers, and so they're not on TikTok, you
No,
know?
they're not on TikTok. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
I actually have a variety of friends that I have encouraged that they've liked the book. "Would you please go on Amazon and write a review? It really helps a book." And they just really don't know how to do things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in that age group that
Yeah,
are technically challenged. So,
technically challenged. That's what my one friend said to me, "As soon as they ask me for my password, it's over."
yeah,
And so it's
yeah.
like,
I
"Okay."
was talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about computers, and then we were talking about TVs, and I mentioned Roku.
Uh-huh.
No idea. What's that? They never heard of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's where we are on that. Now, on this on the book High on Life, what basically inspired you to write it?
My grandkids, I really all of the stories that I chose are things that I wanted them to know. That story, that letter to me, at the terribly strange age of 70 that was really in my heart, a letter to my granddaughter, my oldest granddaughter. So, it's really everything I wanted to say to the kids, things that I want them to know that I find important, such as friendship, such as family dinners, such as going home to St. Louis to see the family, such as visiting my parents' gravesites, These are all important things. I need them to know that. They're not gonna just sit down and go through and I'll go through my list of 500 things I want them to know, but so it all gets covered in these stories somehow, magically.
Would you say family is the central theme of the books?
I Yeah, I think so. Well, I don't I guess, my biggest journey in life so I started to tell you about the Richard Bach's book, Illusions, that the God figure comes to Earth and talks to the mere mortal, and the mere
Yeah, the
mortal
Messiah. Yeah.
yeah, the Messiah Manual, and he tells the mere mortal, "You came to Earth to learn something, and when you've learned it, you get to go home," meaning you get to die. And so the mortal says, "Well, how do you know when you've learned your lesson?" "Well, if you're still alive, you haven't." So I really think that self-acceptance and self-esteem is the lesson that I continue to try and learn. And I learn it in different ways in dealing with friends and in dealing professionally, but also I've spent a lot of time not exactly, but kind of afraid of my kids, and now I spend a little bit of time not exactly, but kind of afraid of my grandkids, you don't wanna say too much or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, family is extremely important to me, and really, my goal in life was to be a mom, so I've done it. I I all of my appointments are in my phone like many people, but I like to have a piece of paper on the counter. So I make a calendar page on Monday for the whole week, and at the top of the calendar page, I write to remind myself, all of my dreams have come true, which is true, they really have. All I wanted was to be a mom.
Yeah.
I've done it. I'm a mom 3 times over. I got 3 children-in-law, well, 4 because my son's been married twice, and I love both of those girls, and I've got 10 grandkids. So, I you know,
You're very lucky. Yeah.
family is very important to me, and still within all of that, I often say to the kids, "I'd like to come to my funeral to see if anyone has anything nice to say about me," you know? Well,
Yeah.
they assure me that people would say something nice, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know.
I
So,
think they
yeah.
will.
So, self-acceptance, self-esteem, those are my main issues as couched by having a family who I love, and I hope they love me back, but who knows?
What part of the writing process for the book challenged you the most?
let's see. I My happiest time of day is writing, and but the most difficult thing is to come up with a topic to write about. So it used to take me back in the day when I was the motivational speaker person, it used to take me a whole week to write a 750 word column. I was a columnist, and all of my columns were 750 words, never 749, never 751, because the editor needed to know how much space to save for me. So it used to take me 5 days to write that 750 word column. Now it takes me 2 or 3 days to write 750 to 1,000 word blog, which is a column. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah,
And so once I get the idea, I'm good. But getting the idea is a little bit difficult. And I have this really isn't the way I write, but it comforts me to think this way. So if you're writing 750 words, if you have a topic sentence, a paragraph that tells everyone what you're going to talk about, and then you have 3 paragraphs that are giving you 3 points, 1, 2, 3, to back up what you're talking about. And then you have a fifth paragraph that sums it all up. And if each of those 5 paragraphs is 150 words, you just wrote a 750 word column. So when I am struggling, I'll just say, Well, what is it I'm talking about?" And sometimes I have to walk laps around the living room for 5 minutes to think, what am I trying to say here? And then what are my 3 bits to validate that point of view, and then how am I gonna tie it all up? Sometimes I have to take a walk outside to get the how to tie it all up at the end, because you don't wanna just it's very rudimentary just to reiterate, "Well, I said I was gonna say this, and now I said it." You can't do that, you have to
yeah.
be more creative than that. So, yeah, so I the hard part for people who write is to, "Oh my, sit down and do it." So, I do not claim to have ADD, I don't think I do, but I use a hack for people with ADD, which is to set a timer. So I set a timer for 2 hours, and that's about how long I can be creative is 2 hours, and I write for 2 hours, and I stopped doing this, but I'm back to doing this. At the end of 2 hours, I give myself a Hershey miniature as a reward, and I stopped doing it because my A1C went up, and I started doing it again because let's not be ridiculous, you know? I can eat a piece of candy.
A very interesting answer, and I think it gives people out there an idea what writers have to go through. It's not that easy just to sit down and start writing. It
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
well,
it's difficult, it really is.
it's easy enough to tell a story about going to the grocery store, for instance, but why would anyone wanna read it? What is
Exactly.
the point? What
If you're looking for real motivation, real grit, and real life resilience, you need to hear the story of U.S. Marine and author Jay Setchell. Jay Setchell is the author of the powerful and inspiring book, The Strength Within You. It's Always Too Soon to Quit. His message isn't built on theory or hype. It's built on a lifetime of facing challenges head on and refusing to back down. As a United States Marine, Jay learned early what it truly means to commit, endure, and overcome. Those lessons followed him far beyond his military service and into every challenge life placed in his path. Through injuries, setbacks, and moments that would have broken many people, Jay held onto one unshakable belief. Quitting was never an option. Not once did he ever think of quitting any challenge in his life. In The Strength Within You, Jay shares how true strength isn't about never failing. It's about standing back up every time. He reminds us that no matter how hard things feel, it is always too soon to quit. His words speak directly to anyone who feels worn down, discouraged, or unsure of their next step. This book is for veterans, athletes, entrepreneurs, parents, and everyday people who want to push through adversity and rediscover their inner strength. Jay's story proves that resilience is a mindset and determination can carry you farther than you ever imagined. If you're ready to be inspired by a Marine who never gave up, never backed down, and never considered quitting, then you need to read The Strength Within You. It's always too soon to quit because the strength you're looking for has been inside you all along. The book may be purchased from Amazon in hardcover, paperback, or Kindle formats.
Is gonna make this evergreen or universal or or whatever, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah,
Lorie,
yeah.
is there a chapter or story in High on Life that is especially close to your heart, and why?
Yeah, so the story about my mom is that story, and that's probably the story that I wanted my kids and grandkids to read the most, just in case they don't love me as much as they should. So my mom was this really wonderful gal, stay-at-home mom, and I just really never appreciated her, I think because she was always around. I mean, I never washed a dish in my mother's house, but when I ate at my aunt's, I washed dishes, but my mother did not require this of us. I didn't do my own laundry. I didn't clean my own room. She just did it all. If a button fell off, she sewed it on. She prepared, 3 meals a day. She packed lunches. Even for my dad, took a brown paper bag with a lunch in it. She just did everything. She was always there, and she made me insane with her presence. So, just I write about she wore Mary Mules, which is a kind of slipper that when you walk, it kinda slaps your heel so you could hear mom coming. And so then I got married, and I moved out of town, and she came for a solid month every time I had a baby to help take care of the babies. But she wasn't really comfortable taking care of babies, so she cooked, she cleaned, she did the laundry. And guess what, Ron? She did not fold the towels the way I wanted them folded. Her first fold was making it a square. I wanted it to be a long rectangle because that's
Ah,
how I was gonna hang it up on the
a
towel
little
rack.
difference between mom and daughter there.
Yeah, and it was like and I was mad at her because, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna have to refold this towel to hang it, instead of being grateful for the million things she did. Well,
Right.
I always hoped that I would reach a point where I just could figure out a way to be a nice daughter when I was in my mother's presence, and then she got sick,
Yeah.
and her illness was 5 weeks from start to finish, and I tried in those 5 weeks to say, "I love you," and I tried to say, "I'm so sorry I was mean to you for all the time," and she just wouldn't go there. She said, "Oh, Jeopardy's on. Let's watch Jeopardy," when she was in the hospital.
She didn't wanna discuss it.
She
Okay.
couldn't go there. So when she died, my friend said to me, "The more you look for your mom, the more you'll find her in your heart." And that's where she's been. She died in 2002. She has been 23 years in my heart, and I talk to her and confer with her at all times. I shouldn't say that. I mean, I'm not crazy or anything, but she's there
No,
for
I
me.
understand.
That's
Yeah, I think we all
she's there.
understand that. Yeah.
And what I have to say, this is the punchline of the story that I want my kids to get to, is even though I love her, love her, and I especially having met a million people who have had terrible childhoods, and I did not clearly have it. I had a marvelous childhood. But if I were to, even after all this time of falling madly in love with the woman, if I were to meet her in heaven on a cold, crisp day, she would most likely say to me, "Put on gloves and a hat." And I would most likely be annoyed, but I hope I would pause for a moment and decode her words and answer in kind. "I love you too, mom," because that's what she was saying,
Yeah.
but kind of a fool with
She wanted
high
the best. She
tone.
wanted the best for you.
She wanted me to be healthy, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah. So and especially mother-daughter kinds of things, there's lots of mother-daughter strife. Well, I have 2 daughters and a son, so I don't know, where do they stand? I think we're close, I think we get along. I don't think any of them are in therapy yet. Maybe. Well, I think therapy's a fine thing, but,
You don't wanna put them there. I hear
I
you.
don't wanna put them there. There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Now
yeah, and
for those out there listening or viewing, the podcast, that for those that are aspiring to write a book about their personal story, what advice would you give them?
sit down and do it. Yeah, so you're supposed to become Pavlov's dog. You're supposed to and I used to be more like this when writing was newer to me. but you're supposed to write the same time every day, 7 days a week. You're supposed to sit in the same chair with the same lucky coffee cup. If you are used to having a cookie at your side with that same cookie, with that same brand of cookie at your side, you're supposed to train yourself when all of these elements are in place. I will write. And so I think that is a great plan. And I think it is a great plan to write every day. Again, I don't now, but I'm just turning out I turn out 2 blogs a month, so that's all I have to write, and then I write book reviews as I finish a book, and I read about 3 dozen books a year, so that's how much writing I'm doing. But in High on Life, I talk about a little bit plus a little bit adds up to a whole lot, which in Yiddish was a bissel. And a bissel machs a großen Schüssel. A little bit and a little bit makes a big bowlful, my parents used to say. And in that story, I talk about, again, this Mike Kahn who wrote a blurb for my book that you would like the chapter titles. He is the father of 5. He was a trial attorney, and yet he wrote this whole series of mysteries. And how did he do that? After the kids went to bed, he wrote 1 page a night. Well, guess
Wow.
what? If you write 365 days a year, you've just created the average size book.
Yeah.
So he cranked out books. So, but you have to sit down and do it, not tomorrow. No, no, don't do it tomorrow. Do it
Okay.
today.
You got to
Yeah,
do it today.
yeah, and there is have you heard of NaNoWriMo? Do you know about NaNoWriMo? NaNoWriMo stands for National Novel Writing Month, and it takes place every November. And your goal is to write a 50,000 word manuscript in the 30 days has September, April, yeah, in the 30 days of November. So that's 1,666 words a day for 30 days to
Wow.
get your 50,000 words. And the understanding is that it's gonna be that CRA word again, that it's gonna be junk, it's gonna be a very rough first draft, but you are gonna sit down and you're gonna write 1,666 words a day. And what you win, all you have to do is upload a 50,000 word manuscript to the NaNoWriMo. I think probably it's a 501(c). It's a, nonprofit
Yeah.
organization. They exist, and some very famous books have been written as a result of someone participating in NaNoWriMo. But it's really a good thing to do because you have other people who are posting that they got their 1,666 words and you want to post too. And it gets you in your chair writing every single day. So that's really the trick, and
That's
again,
true.
yeah, I really think a 2-hour maybe 2 hours is overkill if you're new to this, maybe 20 minutes,
Yeah.
but set a timer and do it every day, and if you're and some days, even now, some days it's just junk, I'm really not writing anything. However, when I come back the next day and read it, there's always something there. There is something there. I have to tell you on the NaNoWriMo, one year, they always have famous authors give advice during the month. It's free to join and everything, though they ask you for donations. And if you win NaNoWriMo, if you get your 50,000 words, you can buy T-shirts that said you won NaNoWriMo this year. And so, of course, they make money on things like that. But one writer said, "Oh, if you are having trouble getting your words today, write a dream because a dream doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to fit. Just write a dream. Have your character have a dream." So that was one thing. And another thing they said is if the words you wrote today are junk, do not, do not delete them. Highlight them and change the font to white so that you can't see them, but they're still there. And then
Okay.
come back to them another day and turn them into black ink again. And there's always something that you wrote that was okay. There really is. There's some kernel of truth that you can pop into a whole bowl of popcorn.
Okay. Now moving on because we're running a little short on time. Where can, well, number one, do you have any upcoming projects or future books in the works? coming up?
No, I'm really not thinking that I'm writing any more books. I am 73 years old. I will be 74 in February. I'm going to promote High on Life with all my heart and soul. So I hope everybody in your listening audience runs out to buy a copy and then, of course, writes a review on Amazon. But I'm going to do that till I'm 75. And then I don't know, around I might take up Mahjong. But I really intend to continue to write my blog, and
Okay.
people can subscribe to that. It's just 2 stories a month, and it's whatever's going on. So I just wrote a recent one was about my granddaughter's bat mitzvah and how hard it is to be a woman getting dressed for a party, and how 12 hours and 3 minutes before the event, my daughters and I were still sending texts back and forth. "What do you think of this dress? And what do you think of that dress?" So
Yeah,
that was the
people
slice
are
of
like
life
that.
column. Yeah.
Like a Substack. Where can people contact you if you want to be contacted, and where is the book available?
Yeah, well, so I am everywhere online but you see how my name is spelled there so nicely, Lorie, so it's Lorie Kleiner Eckert. My website is loriekleinereckert.com. My Etsy shop is loriekleinereckert.etsy.com, where you can those quilts with words, you could buy them printed out on coffee mugs and T-shirts and sweatshirts. And I'm Lorie Kleiner Eckert on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, or I guess it's X now, on LinkedIn, I'm
Yeah.
everywhere. And if you go to my website, you can always, there's a contact form. You can always write me there, but it's really Lorie at loriekleinereckert.com.
Okay,
And
so we should tell our audience it's Lore. I will have this in the podcast notes.
okay, yeah, if they've got my name spelled correctly, if they put me into a search engine, they will come up with, as my grandkids say, just pages and pages of stuff. You're all over Marmal's my grandma name. You're all over Marmal. I am. And the book is available anywhere books are sold, but of course, Amazon.
Okay.
And the latest thing that's happening, it's getting the sample copy in the mail on Thursday, but there's going to be a journal to go along with High on Life. So each of the stories has a one line takeaway, such as there's always something to be grateful for. So there's 40 of these quotes in the book. All of these quotes have a page in the journal with 3 blank pages for you to write your thoughts on that topic. So kind of a little bit of a guided journal for people. So I'm very excited about that. That'll be out soon.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
And I go one last question. What is what is one message or piece of wisdom you would want to share with our listeners or viewers today?
Well, we really didn't talk about this. One of my main topics is personal reinvention. And I think that we reinvent ourselves repeatedly. Like when you graduate from college, you've reinvented yourself. When you get married, you've reinvented yourself. When you have an empty nest, you've reinvented yourself. So we all have a lot of experience in this. So I especially like to tell people this for the rough moments in their life to remember that they have done this before, that they have created a new version of themselves. And I have a very, very, very easy method of personal reinvention because it just has 2 points, 2 things you have to do. One is you have to have a healthy routine. You have to go to bed, you have to wake up, you have to eat, get dressed, take a shower. And the other one, though, that's so important, so this is my one message, is that they have to take 1 step a day in the direction of their new life. So if they're trying to be healthier, if they're trying to get over, at this age, less loss of a loved one, empty nest, whatever, 1 step a day in the direction of your new life, and that's a place where a journal comes in handy because it's really great to use it as an accountability log. So you write down today's date. Let's see, it's January 6th, 2026, and what I did today to move in the direction of my new life is, I called the elementary school to see if they need any tutors. I would like to work with a 2nd grader, you know, and that's
Yeah,
it. I did 1 thing. That's all I had to do. Tomorrow I'll do another 1 thing. So wherever you're trying to move in your life, 1 step, even a teeny tiny step, take 1 step a day, and you'll be going in the right direction.
That's a good advice and good wisdom. And I want to thank you, Lorie. This has been such a warm and thoughtful conversation that we had. I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom, your stories, and your high philosophy with us today. I hope everyone out there finds your moment of stillness today, maybe over a mug of chai.
Thanks so much, Ron.
Thank you. Comments and suggestions for the podcast, you can email me at it's a wrap with rap at gmail.com. Our Facebook group is It's a Wrap with Rap. We have a couple thousand members in there. If you want to join, it's a private group. You can email me. We'll let you in. And we're on Instagram. It's a Wrap with Rap podcast. We're on X, formerly Twitter, at Rapper, WRAPPER 130. Our website is It's a Wrap with Rap.com. And we have a lot of the author's books on there on our book nook, and you'll find them very useful for your book club and things like that. And don't forget, we're on YouTube. It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast uncut. And I want to thank everyone for listening or viewing. Want everybody to please stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap. The podcast is so happy and proud to have Blue Sky CBD as one of our sponsors and supporters. At Blue Sky CBD, they know that the highest quality CBD starts from the seed. Blue Sky partners with sustainable, responsible farms for superior hemp plants to extract their CBD and other healthful phytonutrients. Each of Blue Sky's products contain high concentrations of CBD for maximum impact, and Blue Sky offers some of the lowest cost per milligram CBD on the market. All Blue Sky's products are THC free and are tested by a third party laboratory for potency and purity. All this has made Blue Sky one of the only CBD brands trusted by healthcare professionals across the United States. As the demand for CBD and its therapeutic potential have grown rapidly worldwide, it is difficult to know which products you can trust. At Blue Sky CBD, they just don't sell their products, they use their products. Blue Sky CBD proudly shares testimonials of their loved ones who use these products. Blue Sky CBD guarantees the potency and purity of each and every product they sell. Blue Sky tests their products 3 times. First, the plant is tested, next, the isolate, and last, the final product to ensure each product batch meets Blue Sky's high standards. A copy of the certificate of analysis is linked below each product description online. The Blue Sky CBD website contains client testimonials, including a case study for each testimonial from the people just like you regarding people dealing with severe anxiety and insomnia, high blood pressure, pain management, headache, rheumatoid arthritis and spondylitis, and endocrine balance. Blue Sky even makes the product Pet Love for our canine and feline family members. Blue Sky CBD uses CBD derived from hemp that is THC free, which is drug free and can be sold everywhere legally in the United States. Blue Sky CBD wants you to feel confident with your purchase and offers you excellent customer service. If you are not satisfied with their products, you may request a refund of the full purchase price within 30 days of the product received date. When ordering, please use the podcast link to receive 20% off your initial purchase. The link and website information will be listed in the podcast notes.